Perfect. Well, welcome everyone to the People Strategy Forum podcast. We're a show that guides leaders on how to elevate the overall workforce, and we believe that people are at the heart of successful organizations. So this means that team members' well-being and rewards, career development, they're also essential to that happy and healthy and highly productive workforce. So we're a show that discusses the practical and effective leadership strategies for top executives and senior professionals and talent managers out there. So I would like to introduce first, I'm going to introduce our host for today. We have Howard Niswitz, and for you out there that know Howard, I mean, he is a longtime compensation and HR professional, has extensive experience in systems and design and so forth. He helps companies implement those important systems in place. And so I've had the pleasure with working with Howard for a long time. Also, we have Sumit Singla. Sumit Singla is my co-author on a new book that we just released, The Workforce Experience. And so I'm pretty pleased to have Sumit with us. He's just a brilliant mind with a ton of international experience. And so he's always a great person to have in your network. And then, of course, we have Shar Miller. Shar Miller is a serial entrepreneur, I like to say. She has a couple of irons in the fire with her consulting and coaching. She's also an experienced HR professional with a deep expertise there in her field. And so I would like to talk about our expert contributor today. So that's Nathalie Davis. So Nathalie Davis is a seasoned HR professional. She's led HR organizations, and she's currently stepping in, helping lead another organization, and she's in high demand for sure. We're going to talk about the important skill of ensuring that there is a safe work environment, and safe from the perspective of ensuring that there's no hostility and we have that psychological safety and so forth. And Nathalie is going to take us down a journey of telling it not only about her personal experience in this field, but how she can help organizations be more impactful and be a safe place to work. So Nathalie, first of all, just thank you for joining us here. But one thing before we get started, just love to hear a little bit more about how you got into the field and how you were helping your clients.
So HR has always been a passion of mine. You often hear people talk about, I just fell into HR, I wanted to do something different. That was my goal since college. I took the one organizational development course as part of my psychology classes, and that's where I knew I belonged. And so after that, it was, wow, I really, really enjoyed this. And actually, my first couple of jobs outside of college weren't even HR, but they were HR related. I managed a Denny's. So if you've heard of Denny's restaurants, I was a manager there, and then started doing customer service. And then I landed my first HR job, which was great, which was at the Keebler Company in Elmhurst, Illinois, and started working in HR, and I never left. So it's been a long road there, and I've enjoyed HR for a long time. And so are you asking too how I got into this psychological safety and bullying perspective as well?
Yeah. But before we go there, I just love
Sure.
to hear a little bit more about Keebler. I just love those cookies.
Yes, yes. So Keebler was great back in Elmhurst. I mean, all the little elves in the hollow
Yeah.
tree. I still can sing the jingle, all of that. It was fantastic. Great experience, gave me my start. And actually, I worked for them for about 13 years. Then I took kind of that risk. I'm going to show my age a little bit and hit the .com area. So I was the head of HR for a small .com startup, and that lasted about 9 months. And ended up getting hired back at Keebler. But during those 9 months, Keebler was actually purchased by Kellogg's.
Yeah.
So for the next 12 years or so, I spent my career at Kellogg Company. And it was great. So I go from elves to tigers and toucan Sams and everything. It must be something about the cartoon characters. And so it was a great organization. They're very high on their HR policies and structures and how they do development. And then I decided again, after some long time there, I'm going to do some nonprofit work. And
Hmm.
so my last three companies were all nonprofits. Learned a whole different perspective going from a Fortune 500 company to a company that says, oh, your budget is about $30,000. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what? And so it taught me just a little bit differently. And when you're in a smaller organization, you get to do things that you wouldn't do in a bigger organization. So I got involved in the finance, I got involved in budgeting, even real estate, those kind of things. And so again, but still wanted to stay in the HR field. And now I'm doing something on my own. I'm out doing my own consulting and coaching and having a fun time with it. And like you said, right now I'm acting as an acting CHRO for an organization.
Well, I'm sure you're that so much experience. People are just love to get a hold of you in any way that they can, for sure. So,
Yes.
when you were talking about your experience with being in large companies and nonprofits and so forth, and I think that one thing that we've learned here over the past 10 years, and we've always known, I'm sure, is that the environment we work in is so important. The people that we work with, and ensuring that there's a healthy workplace among team members is critical.
Yes.
What really got you into the area of workplace safety and helping companies achieve that important factor?
Okay. Well, actually, it was a situation that happened with my mother. My mother was the target of a workplace bully, and I saw how that just so negatively impacted her life. I mean, she would come home from work, and some days she would just go straight from the car to the bed and just cry. And it was one woman, she had worked with the company for many, many years and got a new boss. And this woman was just brutal to her, the name calling, you're no good. I don't know how you've been here this long, those kind of things, and just the negative impact that it had on her. And seeing that was kind of a start. She was asking me, how can you help me? And I actually, said, hey, have you talked to your HR people? And HR doesn't help me. And sometimes you hear that a lot when you're hearing about psychological safety and bullying. I went to HR, they're not doing anything. And so even though that manager left the organization about a year later, the repercussions were still there. It took a long time for her to get her confidence back, to feel like she was accepted. She felt so much that her reputation had been ruined by this manager, and she was trying so desperately hard to get that back. And she eventually kind of came out of it, but I really did see that negative impact happen to her, and it was terrible. And then it happened to me. Yeah, as an HR person, I actually had someone in HR that was actually a bully to me. And again, having worked with the organization a long time and trying to figure out, my goodness, I've been successful for so long, what's happening? And, it was not so much the yelling or the screaming, it's the very subtle things that you don't, not being invited to a meeting, or I told you to do something and you didn't do it quite right. So start it all over again, not giving me specific information until I started feeling like, am I going crazy? What's happening to me? And I would ask other people and they're like, no, he's just that way. Right. And when you get, he's just
Yeah.
that way. So then again, who do you report to when you're in HR and your boss
Mm.
is in HR?
Right.
So again, it was kind of one of those things that it was like, you know what? I think it's time for me to just make my own decisions and just move on. And I moved on, and it's been great. No problem. I have no animosity or anything like that. But I still, at times, I'm pretty hyper vigilant when people say perfectionism. I can get hypervigilant sometimes, and that's one of the after effects. So that's what I try to coach people on. How do you move past that? How do you move on? How do you recognize you're still a very skillful person, and try to minimize what happened to you previously?
Yeah. Well, one thing that you brought up that I really want to point out and highlight here is that when this type of bullying happens in the workplace, leaders often think, well, geez, I gotta make sure that I have a healthy workplace. I have to make sure that we're protecting the team. But the real thing is, like you mentioned, it doesn't just impact the workplace, it impacts home. It impacts the home life.
Yep.
And I've witnessed this myself. I mean, with my children coming at home after a hard day, my wife, and there was a time where my wife was she was doing the just her dream job. She loved helping
Mm,
these kids, and but she was also in a very toxic workplace at the same time. And even though that she was doing something that she loved, she would just come home just exhausted.
yeah.
And this was going on for uh, years, really, and it took its toll. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think that you're right. I mean, leaders need to be aware that this goes beyond just the workspace, and
Right.
it can extend into home and have long-term impacts.
It can, absolutely. And one thing I want to emphasize too, when we talk about safe workplaces, a lot of managers don't like to hear that safe because they think it's soft or kind of mushy, or, it's not the physical kind of soft where no, we're not going to, have you in lockout, tag out or anything like that. But it feels like, oh, that's kind of soft. And it's like, it's not, it's being human. Right. That's how, again, it goes back to that golden platinum rule: treat people the way they want to be treated. And we still have a lot of managers that are out there that are in that former kind of world where it's like, nope, nope, nope. If you get people to do what you need, you got to really kick them in, kick them in. And it's not that at all. It's very different nowadays, which is why you're seeing, unfortunately, strikes happen, and things like that, because employees are taking their power back and saying, we want to be treated fairly and equitably and have good working conditions, not just psychologically, but physically too.
Well, that is why my colleagues here know that my famous saying is HR with a heart. Okay.
Yep.
Because
Yes.
I do, and I won't bore you with how I was bullied at very
Mhm.
difficult times in my life as an
Mhm.
HR executive.
Mhm.
Um, but when I left corporate, it was my motive, with traditional corporate,
Yes, I hear
I
you.
still work in HR and talent management strategy because I have the blessing of working with comp team, and I'm so happy. And then I do my own stuff. But yeah, I mean, and then I think I just want to say, yes, Sam, my daughter, I mean, in her first 3 jobs, one employer literally violated 9. We counted 9 on her first day,
Wow.
violations in front of the owner, and didn't want to pay her for her time.
Oh
And
dear.
my daughter, she's a spitfire, man. She's like, you don't know who you're dealing with and who raised me.
There you go. Love it.
But it just shocked me. I mean, it actually triggered some health issues with my daughter. My daughter does have some health issues.
Yeah.
Um, and so she's decided to completely maybe redirect and maybe not work in kind of a traditional office environment because of that
Mhm.
behavior.
Mm,
But I did suggest there are companies out there that get it. I mean, it's just takes some research to find the right companies and to find the companies that embrace culture and diversity and all of the positive psychology concepts that we talk about.
yes,
Um,
absolutely.
so how does somebody find, like your mother or those that we know, how does someone find companies that really value what you talk about? What do you think about that?
So it's really interesting. So many companies have websites and things like that. And you look and you see, oh, here are the company's core values, and here's what we express, and things like that. And when you come to work here, it's kind of viewed like this wonderful utopia. And a lot of times it's not. So there are some things that you can do. Do your research. I mean, there's the basic things. Look on LinkedIn, check Glassdoor, look on Indeed, certain things like that. You can find out what are the lawsuits happening. You can even ask kind of covertly if you're ever in an interviewing process. Ask, tell me how you handle conflicts. What's a good dispute resolution? Give me an example of a time an employee complained. Now, you can actually go back and you're interviewing the interviewer, right? how do you handle employee complaints, and tell me how that's handled. And if it's like, oh, we just sent them to HR. We just sent them
Mhm.
to HR. That's an
They don't trust
indication
HR
right there.
sometimes.
Right.
No,
That's
I
an
love that
indication.
idea. I really love that idea. Ask it in an interview, or maybe even find people that work there and interview them too.
Absolutely. Interview them and find out, everybody's, behind the glass doors. There's a lot of stuff that goes on. Ask about turnover rate. That's a good thing to find out too. If it's high, some industries, yes, you're naturally going to have high turnover. But if you're looking at companies where there's not a lot of longevity, or if you're looking on like LinkedIn or Indeed, and you see kind of the same positions posted a lot, and it doesn't look like that should be a high turnover job, that might be an indication too. It might be an indication of a certain leader within that organization, maybe not the whole company.
You could also
Great
use
advice.
LinkedIn to look at people that worked at the company previously and reach out to them. Now, again, you got to look at it carefully because they did leave, but you can reach out and try and find out a little bit more about what the reasons why, behind why they left.
Right. And sometimes if it's several years ago, circumstances change. Companies get bought out, they change out leadership. Right. So even if you had a previously poor experience, things might have developed or changed. I know of one organization that pretty much basically sent their whole leadership team to compassionate care training and really started holding them accountable for how they are impacting their employees. They measure things like what's promotability, how many complaints are we getting, any lawsuits, how many leaders have you developed, and they really look at those measures really critically to make sure that they're having a good environment. So if you start to recognize that some situations are happening, reach out to a consultant or a company that can help you. Reach out to me if you like. But yes, absolutely, reach out to see what kind of help you can get. Sometimes it's also difficult too when you have a bully that is quote unquote the superstar, because that's the hardest. If you have somebody that's your top salesman, but just kind of is not the best person all around, it's going to be really hard for that leader or that organization's leadership to say, we're going to have to make a tough decision. Either we take it this way and accept the behavior, or we let them go. And I feel the strength of an organization is only as strong as your weakest link that we talk about. So if that's your weak link, then think about what the future may hold.
Completely agree. In fact, that's what I was thinking of while you were talking. And I do a lot of work around culture. One of the things that I recommend to clients is, in simple words, your culture is the worst behavior that you're prepared to tolerate. So
yes,
you've got those brilliant jerks, people who bring in a lot of revenue, who are important to the business, and you give them a free hand.
Yes.
It's not really going to work out for you in the long term. That's one of the things I was thinking of. The second was the point about researching on past employees. So one of the additions I suggest to that is look at what those people are doing now. And if you see a trend of people being in, let's say, the same location or around the same location, but there's a trend of them having kind of taken up lower positions, it could be an indicator of quitting a toxic workplace because you can't stand it and then picking up whatever's the next best option. So if you see a trend that there's not much in terms of career progression happening, or if people are actually joining lower positions, and of course, since we're part of comp team, don't go by the role titles, try and understand what the level of the job is.
Absolutely.
But it could be good to figure out, and could be good insight into what's the culture really like. The other thing was, and this is a bit of an Indian perspective here. So you'd pretty much be likely to get booted out of an interview if you start asking questions about what's the complaints process, etc., because they'll be like, troublemaker. And
that's a good perspective.
well, it's very likely they'll see you as somebody who's just here to stir the pot and may not look very favorably upon your candidature.
That is great information and feedback. Thank you for that. Definitely from a different cultural perspective, that could be seen differently. Absolutely. So someone just trying to get information versus the troublemaker. That's very good. I'll keep that in mind for sure. For sure.
So one other thing, I mean, Natalie, you mentioned a lot of ways for us for large organizations to look at metrics to, you know, such as turnover and so forth to determine if they have a problem. But sometimes things don't show up in the numbers, right? It may be a smaller team. And so in your experience, what are some common signs or things and behavioral things that we could look at that define a toxic work culture in certain you know, manager organizations or in smaller situations?
Yep. So again, if you're in a smaller organization or even a big one, how long does that employee usually stay within that team? Does that team have a high level of turnover? Things like employee satisfaction or customer surveys or, you know, employee surveys, that can give you an indication. I know that's more of a metric, but you can start to see that. People talk. Sometimes the best place to do is to sit in the cafeteria and listen. I know that was easier when we were all on site, but you could definitely hear some things like, oh my gosh, I'm so sad. You can see the people that are running, that are stressed. We had in a former company, an IT department, and they never looked like they were ever calm. They were always looking to run. They were always sweating. You would see them start at 6 o'clock in the morning. If you know you happen to work late, why is the IT department still, their parking lot area is still pretty full? What's going on there? And again, it could be busy, or it could be, hey, we got to work so hard that we got to work 12, 14, 16 hours a day. So those are some of the little signs. Even from an internal mobility perspective, if you have people that don't want to apply and you're always having to have people come in externally, that could be an indication as well. So we had a former, you know, on the good side, we had a CFO that people, whenever he had a job opening in his division, I mean, the requisitions and the people applying for that were out the door because they knew he was such a great leader and he developed people and he was really good. But those other organizations, you wouldn't see internal candidates, you know, or you would hear the poor person that said, you know, I'm going to be different because I know I'm good and I'm successful and I've been successful the last 10 years of my career, and they're out in a year. So, and then just listen, you know, they treat me horribly. Look for the people that don't smile, you know, a lot, or they're always eating at their desk. And again, it's very different now in this hybrid world and things like that. But those were some of the indications. And like I said, people talk and word gets around. And that's how you can find out, just kind of listening.
Well, really quick, and what does bullying look like in a remote environment? I mean, what does it look and feel like there?
Actually, some people have said that bullying has gotten worse since people have gone remote. So that could be something as really horrendous as chewing out an employee on a Zoom call and doing it in chat. That was a dumb idea. Or stop embarrassing the team with your discussions. You don't have to answer any more questions. People have done that. So you have that. If you don't have your camera on all the time, what are you doing? What are you doing? You're getting texts all the time. You know, why isn't your light green on your Teams? You know, where are you? And it could be, I just went down to make a grilled cheese sandwich and it's 11:45 and I still like to eat lunch, right? It's those kind of things. It becomes much more of the micromanagement. So where before you may have been the person, I see them in their office, therefore they must be working. Well, I can't see them as much now. And I'm a little bit of a controlling manager. So I just want to make sure that they really are working, which is why they started finding things like the mouse mover and things like that. And yeah, there are some people that will do that and take advantage of the company, but not 95% of them. So my thing is, why are you punishing the 95% for the 5% that are doing this? So it's much more the micromanagement, making sure that people are actually quote unquote working and not doing other things. So that's how it's really showing up now in kind of this remote workspace.
Sorry, Sumit, did you have anything?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about the mouse mover, which is, of course, a favorite topic of mine as well. And it's just crazy how if you build a toxic culture, it becomes a race to the bottom where people start figuring out newer and more different things to do. Like some companies started using software which would automatically turn on your camera to see
wow.
what you're up to and whether you're in front of your desk or not. So people got around that requirement by getting a second screen and playing a pre-recorded video of them just sitting there.
Oh my
So,
goodness. Wow. Wow. Well,
but it's
people
a
are,
race that no one's winning, right? I
yeah,
mean, it's serving no one well. You're actually spending good organizational money and running your culture into the ground.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, think about that. And when you're talking about trust, so Patrick Lencioni, I'm a big fan of, and 5 dysfunctions of a team, that trust, that's the baseline. And if you're
Absolutely.
not really trusting your employees, of course, like I said, every company has the few people that want to try to do what they're not supposed to do. But if 95% of your employees are doing well, don't punish them by putting in these punitive kind of measures that's really going to say, wow, they really don't trust us. Was the work getting done? Yes. Were there any issues? No. Were all the deliverables being met on time? Yes. Then don't worry about it. It's
Yeah.
okay that you're at your computer. Oh, and you're going to throw in a load of laundry. That's what I do. Right? You're still working. I may be doing a webinar and there's laundry going on. I'm still
Yeah.
working. Yeah.
So, I mean, I think you really pointed it out there. I mean, it's just managers nowadays, they because of all the technology that's coming out, we use technology good in bad ways, right? And we were just mentioning as far as mouse movers and monitoring your employees, but also employees are have the ability to leverage AI and so forth. And there's a lot of situations where technology can be used to accelerate performance. And but I think it's really important what you mentioned is really it's getting things done. Are things getting done? And that should be the measure, not whether it's a perfect attendance or if somebody's sitting behind their computer. I mean, we should really encourage people to be less behind their computer, but still keep that performance up. That would be great, right? So
yes.
so,
Actually, a lot more companies, and this is what I wish would be done, are really starting to promote wellness again. And it's not really the psychological safety, but it's like, get up out of the chair. We don't expect you to sit in front of the camera or the computer 8 hours a day. Get up, take a 45-minute walk if you need to. If again, you need to work 11 to 7 as opposed to 9 to 5, if that works, it's fine. If you have to attend certain meetings, great. But if you're, have that flexibility, use that flexibility. I think the pandemic actually hurt a lot of people, not only from the physicalness, but how people got things done. And if you think of parents, a lot of you mentioned you had children, and parents are at home trying to do work and trying to help their kids do homework while they're having remote learning experiences. And if you have 2 or 3, how are we going to manage all of that? So again, bringing that psychological safety, and I talk about empathy. So are they a little bit later with the deliverable? They may be, but they're also doing their work and helping their 3 children manage the day, depending on the age. So that's where I talk about the empathy needs to be important. When you're bullying, think about, well, hopefully none of you would, but it's kind of like, think about that person's perspective. Are you asking them a question, or are you really intending to hurt somebody? There's that intentionality versus somebody's that's not aware that what they're doing is bullying. Some people call it, oh, they're just being a tough manager. They're holding their team accountable. There's a way to hold people accountable without yelling at them or degrading them, or, taking away that, threatening. Hey, you don't stop doing that, that's your job. That's back from the 60s. What was that show? I can't remember the show back in the 60s, The Office kind of thing, but it was like, wow, Mad Men.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
Like, we don't do that anymore. We
Yeah.
have to evolve from that.
Right. Good points. So, I mean, we mentioned there's things that leaders can do
Yes.
to promote a healthy workplace. I mean, one
Right.
of it is providing training and so forth around that, and
Yeah.
awareness. But what are the other things that leaders can do beyond training and awareness to create healthy work environments?
Sometimes the toughest thing is to really walk the talk. And if you know that you have that person in your environment that's truly behaving with a toxic way, sometimes the best thing is to set that person as an example and say that person's no longer with the organization, and you try to rebuild that team. And then people feel like they finally listened, they heard, they understood. Again, I worked with a team that had a very, very toxic leader. Walked around, they called it the wall of shame, where he had actually punched holes in walls when he got mad or he broke things. And finally, they did let him go. And the new person that came in to replace him, she said it took about 2 years for people to kind of get over that trauma. She said, I couldn't even get him to answer a question because he would berate them so that, hey, you have vice presidents that are coming in and going to the restroom and throwing up before a meeting because they were so scared, right? And so it took that time to redevelop that trust. So sometimes making that, we got to set the example. You as a leader have to set the example. How do you build your team? And sometimes it's not a big initiative, it's team by team. How did that one CFO really drive that? He developed leaders that absolutely became like him. Like, I want to be followed like that too. I want to develop people. And so when you create leaders like that, it kind of has that effect. It starts to build in the organization. And that's what you want. It just may not be this overall thing, because training sometimes is good and it doesn't take effect. I mean, we've been doing sexual harassment training for years and sometimes it still doesn't work. Or discrimination, we talk about that all the time. Sometimes it still doesn't work. It's really up to the leaders. I'm talking your senior executives that have to set the stage and are willing to make those tough decisions and tough choices. And when they show that they're going to have compassion, they're going to listen to their employees, you can build a culture that's really great. Again, it doesn't have to be the company overall, but if you take these steps progressively, I think it can happen.
Well, I have to say, I see Andre has something to say too, but I'll just say this real quick. It was shocking to me when my vice president was in the middle of a investigation with the compliance department over multiple complaints for bullying. And he was bullying me as well. And he wanted me to terminate my 2 eldest employees, only a couple like months away from their retirement.
Oh,
without any type of corrective actions in their file. But anyway, his boss came out and did a skip level, and then the VP sent out an email to the entire team and said, "This is my visceral reaction," and
wow.
and I just was like, "Oh my gosh!" And then he didn't come to the team building bowling thing that night either because he was so mad about the honesty. And then 2 weeks later, he tried to lay me off with his very new HR lady that didn't know anything about HR. And I said, I'm going to hand you my computer and my iPhone, and I'm leaving. And ultimately, I got a full 6 months paid severance and full benefits. Now, I don't like to tell you guys my war stories, but what's shocking is this is the HR department.
It happens in
And
HR
what's
too.
shocking,
Yes.
it's shocking that the guy that did the skip level knew that they were trying to lay me off for speaking the truth too. So it is hard working in HR and being the honest broker.
Yep.
And I knew that I was probably committing a career suicide situation, but I felt this man was bullying people, LGBTQ, I can't say it all,
Yep.
women, minorities, and I just couldn't tolerate it. And so I spoke the truth, knowing that my job was going to be on the line. It's scary. It's
It is
really
very scary.
scary. And I'm sorry, my mouth is too big. This team here knows that.
Oh, gosh.
And I stand up. I stand up for people.
Yep.
But anyway, yeah, it's just sad. Why would that happen in HR departments? But
It does, because guess what? HR department full of flawed people as well. Just like any profession, you have good leaders and bad. Something I found out, or I talk about too, just like that leader that had other people wanting to follow him because he was such a good person, you have other people that will follow bullies and do well because they feel that that's the way to get to the higher position. And they start taking on some of those traits too. Oh, my boss yells, then nothing ever happens to him or her. Therefore, I'm going to start yelling because I want to move up. I want to be in that high position next time. And that's an opposite way of how you start building that toxic culture. Because if you don't address it head on, other people are thinking if that's the only way that people can get things done and it's tolerated and we've reported it and senior leaders still don't do anything, well, either I'm going to have to go with that flow or I'm going to have to find another place to go.
Well, yeah,
That's
that entire executive team was like that. In fact, here's Andre Blom. I think you just answered his question. He's in the chat. Why do people accept a toxic environment according to your insight? So I think you started to answer that question. Why do people accept the toxic culture? And so what I'm hearing from you, it's because that's the way they fit in. Kind of like high school, right?
Yep.
If you want to be part of the popular clique that, bullies other people, well, you're going to act the same way. You're going to be a bully, just like, I'm not saying popular people are all bullies, guys.
Right. I know what you meant.
But to fit into that clique,
You can also be fearful of losing your job,
that's it, Howard, too.
And you could like your team, and it could be, oh, I have a really great team and I like working with them, but I still have all the pressure from above. There's a lot of different reasons why people are accepting. I think it's changing a bit now as we evolve and look at company culture, but it's tough. You're in a high pressure situation.
Yep. Sometimes you have, again, I'm a single parent. I have 2 children with disabilities. And sometimes it's like, I got to stay because you got to think of the big picture. But then you have to think again of your mental health. I didn't want to be like my mom and coming home and just going to bed and crying. Or guess what? And I'll just be, transparent. Why is my wine budget so high lately? I can't figure that out either, right? So you have to make that choice.
True.
And my choice is I had to stay healthy because I'm my kid's only parent and I want to be around for a long time. And I was like, you know what? If I have to go to Costco and frost cupcakes, which is a fun thing to do anyway, guess what? I'll do it if I have to. You just have to start thinking about the choices you want to make. And so people sometimes stay just because of pure economics. I have to take care of my family. I have to take care of my bills. I've been here for 15, 20 years. I don't want to lose a pension if people still have pensions out there, or my retirement, or our health benefits are so great. There are lots of reasons that people accept it. Sometimes it's like, I'll just let it blow over. Maybe in 4 or 5 years, that manager will be gone and I'll be okay. But again, what are you willing to take? What is that line?
Total blinders, right? I mean, it's such a lack of aligning with the values of the company that's written on the wall. I mean, that's the thing that's why I've always said compassion, dignity, and respect always. I say that all the time. I say that in every aspect of my HR career, and I've been saying it for my 25 plus or 10 plus years. I'm kidding. at HR. It's always been my value since day one.
Yep, your values and mine are very similar. I call mine the CARE model: compassion, accountability, respect, and empathy. Those are the four
Perfect.
things that you should show as a leader: compassion, accountability. And that's when I talk about the soft, when people say, oh, it's a little bit soft and warm and fuzzy, not accountability. We're not saying that employees can have everything they want anytime and set everything that they want to do, right? But have them be accountable, but still show people with, respect, dignity, empathy. Sometimes it's just a temporary thing, sometimes bullying happens because they know they can get to you. Right? Watch this and blah, blah, blah. People are not so nice. Some people are not so nice. So you just have to, again, figure out what do you need to do with our culture and what kind of company do you want to be known for?
Well,
Right.
and I am also seeing that different, or perhaps younger, I'll just say younger generations. I'm not going to typecast generations, but the research that I've been doing is it's not tolerated anymore.
Right.
I feel younger generations are speaking up and saying, excuse me, just like my daughter did. She said, excuse me, you just discriminated against that person. You just asked me what my religion is, and now you're talking to me about my sex life. Hello?
Right.
And this is my first day? And my daughter,
Wow.
I'm sorry, I love my daughter and I was so proud of her. And she came home and she's like, I quit. And I was just like, wow.
Yeah. Good for
Mhm.
you.
And
You know what?
I was like, I don't know if I would have had the bravery to do that on my first day when I was 23.
You know what?
Yeah.
But you know what's happening? Some of the people in the younger generations have seen what their parents went through, and they've seen
True.
things happen like, okay, guess what? I'm going to miss your graduation because I have to work, or I've only been to 1 of 10 of your basketball or soccer games, or guess what? We can't go out on the weekend because you're working, or you're answering your cell phone at 3 o'clock in the morning. And they're like, I'm not doing that. And so maybe they are taking that better stance than we did and are out there vocalizing better.
Yeah.
Well, it's nice to meet you. I need to pop off, but pleasure meeting you.
Nice
All
meeting
right.
you, Shar. Thank
See you,
you.
Shar.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.
So Natalie, I have a follow-up question based on what Shar was saying. I mean, I know
Yes.
that you work with a lot of women and minors and so forth. What are the unique issues that they experience in this area of bullying? Can you highlight on that?
So women of color particularly, is that what you
Yeah,
asked?
women or any
Yeah.
type of minority groups. I mean, how do they
Yeah.
experience things a little bit differently in this area?
So, there's lots of things that happen, culturally, and that, Sumit, you were great when you talked about the culture in your area. And by the way, I love the thing you put in the chat, off the walls and in the halls. I think that's awesome. So, but yes, there are, hold on, I just lost the question again. Oh, yes, what happens? So women of color, so Black women, if you stand up for yourself, you're labeled the angry Black woman, right? Have you ever heard of the thing called code switching? Code switching.
No, yeah. Tell us about that.
So code switching is a way of determining how professional you speak in an organization, right? So I'll just kind of say it out there. So when I'm with my girlfriends, it's kind of like, hey girl, how you doing? Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, 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 yeah. And when you're at the office, it's hello, how are you? I'm fine, thank you. My father used to tease me all the time, and I never knew there was a name for it, but it's code switching. It's actually switching your personality a little bit in order to be viewed as professional, as determined what a corporate professional life looks like. So there's lots of things, right now, Black women, a big thing is hair. So if you've heard of the Dove bill, so Dove bill basically, it's the Crown Act, that's what it's called. So they're saying, Black women, you can wear your hair naturally, where probably 10, 20 years ago, things like braids or twists or dreadlocks or anything like that was deemed unprofessional. And so you would get harassed or bullied. You can't work here with your hair looking like that. And so now it's coming to the point where they're saying that's the stuff that's growing naturally out of their head. They can't change it. Why would you make them do that? So it's little things like that to say, we need to make a difference. We need to say, how can we be more inclusive, more accepting, things like that. I know in Latin America, as an example, people like to get to know each other a little bit more before they go into business or have business discussions. In the US, we're very direct. Hi, nice to meet you, Sam. Okay, let's talk about the stats and let's talk about the financials, right? And in Latin America, it's like, wow, you didn't even ask me about my family, or you didn't even ask how I'm doing. It's all business. And so you don't build that trust. So again, it could be cultural, it could be people's perception of you. Right now, and the world is ugly and there's a lot of stuff going on, social media, TV, politics, and all of that. So everybody has probably just a little bit more heightened sensitivity, but it is more of, how do we take our power back? How do you, as a minority person, say, I don't want, or that makes me uncomfortable? Because you used to never say that. My mother, the one that was bullied, she said, you can call a person an SOB behind your back, but you say, okay, no problem, to their face. And right now, it's kind of like people are saying, well, I prefer not to do that. I still won't call my boss an SOB, but it would be like, can I disagree with you? Or can I offer a differing opinion? So how that's handled, and caste, there are different social classes. How do you handle working with your boss? Some people will never disagree with their boss because of that utmost respect. So how can you learn to be respectful yet disagree at the same time? Because that's going to be really important. So understanding cultural differences, understanding what people have gone through in life, that's where the empathy comes in and says, yes, I've understood. I remember both of my parents worked for the same company their whole career. My dad was a postal employee, and he worked there 40 years, got the pension and everything. My mom worked for what was then Illinois Bell, then turned into Western Electric, AT&T, Lucent, and all of that, right? Her whole career. And nobody does that anymore, right? But again, that's what we were taught as when, get a job, stay there. Doesn't matter how long what you're feeling, you stay at that job if it pays good money. So you learn those things, and it's a matter of unlearning.
Right. Well, I know you help a lot of organizations, go through this with your workshops and so forth. Can you give us a bit of a glimpse of what your workshops are like?
So really what I do is really just talk to leadership teams. It's not really a workshop. It's sitting down and having a discussion and say, ask the question, how did you know that there was a problem? And try to get to the root cause. What happened? How did we get this way? Sometimes it comes up like, we didn't used to be this way, but 5 years ago, we went through some really big struggles financially, and things got tighter. And as things got tighter, we got a little bit meaner and demanded more. And it kind of evolved that way. So I really love to do deep root analysis to try to figure out what happened with that particular team or that particular company. And that's all the employee engagement things that we do as an HR team, is really trying to find out what happened. Do you know if it's company-wide or is it limited to a couple of departments? How do you think you've handled it? And sometimes you get to talk to the legal department, the HR department, the compliance department, find out where, that 800 number. Sometimes a lot of companies have the 800 number where you can call to report bullying or discrimination. And it's like, how many calls have you gotten? And try to figure out what are the nature of those calls and what have you done? The biggest thing is, what did you do about it? And the hardest part, though, from an HR perspective, is because there's so many things related to employee privacy, we can't necessarily tell you what we did, right? So when people say HR did nothing, oh, we did something, but I can't tell you what it is. And I hope at some point we get to be able to say, if you were a target of a bullying or harassment, we would at least like to give you some closure so that you can find out what happened. And so some of that employee, secrecy, it doesn't help, but that's what we really like to do. And people will start to see it. Like I said, when leadership says, nope, you got to go, people will start to see it. They'll see the type of leaders they're starting to recruit in. The one company that made their whole leadership team go through immersive customer, that's what you need to do. So, again, it's a one-on-one thing. It's really very personalized based on your company and your style. A nonprofit is different sometimes from a big company because everybody's passionate in a nonprofit pretty much, right? Hey, we have this thing we want to do and we want to cure and we want to help children and we want to, help families. So we're all passionate and you can't mistake passion for being mean, right?
Right.
So again, it's just really using that personalized kind of questionnaire and what are you doing to handle it? That's the big thing. Take some action.
Oh, great. Well, thank you, Natalie. So for our listeners out there, we do just have a few more minutes. And so if you have any final questions for Natalie, please put them in the chat now. But Natalie, can you tell us a little bit about, if our listeners want to learn more and want to get help,
Yep.
how do they reach out to you?
So I have a website, NLD Coaching, Nathalie Lofton Davis, NLDcoaching.com. You can reach me there. I have my calendar link and you can set up a free, discussion, whether it's for your team or you personally. So I do one-on-one coaching as well. So if you want to reach out, just go out on my website. You can find me on LinkedIn too, as well, Nathalie Davis, and I'm there. So feel free to reach out. I'm happy to talk with you.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. So one question, do you for those bullies out there that want help,
Yes.
Can you help a bully become a better person?
You can help a bully become a better person if they want to become a better person.
Yeah.
Now, the one thing that I will say though, I am a coach. I am not a psychologist or a therapist. So sometimes I will say, you may need to work some of these things out through therapy, not necessarily through coaching, but we can work hand in hand in that and making sure that if you really are recognize it, let's get you some help and let's try.
Great. Thank you so much, Natalie, for all your wisdom. It's been a great discussion.
Thank you for having me. This has been fun and fantastic.
All right. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. And we'll see you next week on the People Strategy Forum. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.